He'd dump her at the hospital while she was screaming in pain. He thought she was weak. He thought she was broke. He was wrong.
Get down and stop being dramatic.
Marcus drove away from the hospital while Keisha was in active labor, choosing a luxury trip with his mother over the birth of his own child. He thought he could return a week later and treat her like trash, believing she had nowhere else to go.
Listen to me. You are poor and don't have a dime, and once I'm done, you will be crawling back.
But while Marcus was sipping champagne in Miami, Keisha received an email that changed her life forever.
You ungrateful wench. You think you can steal my grandchild?
Why did she walk into the courtroom wearing old, ragged clothes when she had a secret weapon in her bag? What was the shocking revelation that made Marcus faint on the courtroom floor? And what happened 6 months later that made him regret every single decision he ever made? You won't believe the secret she was hiding. The ending is the ultimate satisfaction. What happens when the person you stepped on becomes the one holding the keys to your survival? The fall is coming, and it's going to be brutal. Watch closely, because the moment he sees the numbers on the screen, his life as he knows it ends. Welcome to Folktale Bestie, where we bring you tales of betrayal, resilience, and sweet revenge. If you love stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps us grow and bring you more intense episodes. And before we begin, drop a comment below and tell us, which country are you watching from today? We love seeing our global family. Let's get into the story. The contraction hit Keisha so hard, she dropped her overnight bag on the pavement of the Grady Memorial Emergency Drop-Off. It was 4:30 a.m. Get out the car, Keisha. I told you, Pops is sick. I gotta go, Marcus said, his hands gripping the steering wheel, engine still running. He didn't even put the car in park. Keisha looked at him, sweat beading on her forehead, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Marcus, not again. You promised you'd be here this time. Remember the last time? Man, stop bringing up the past. You're dramatic. Marcus snapped, refusing to look at her. You're a strong woman. You can handle it. I'll be back in a few hours. Pops needs his meds. He hit the unlock button. The click sounded like a gunshot in the quiet morning air. Go on, Keisha. I ain't got time for this. Keisha stumbled out, clutching her stomach, her legs shaking under the weight of her body and the betrayal. She barely cleared the doorframe before Marcus slammed the gas. She watched his Dodge Charger peel off toward the highway, the red taillights blurring into streaks in the dark. As those lights faded, the pain in her abdomen twisted. But it wasn't just a labor. It was a rip in time. The sight of him driving away dragged her back 3 years. Cascade, Ms. Evelyn's house. July. It was 95 degrees in the shade. Ms. Evelyn's 60th birthday cookout. The backyard was packed with 50 people, music blasting, smoke rising from the grill. Keisha was 6 months pregnant with their first son, Malik. Her ankles were swollen to the size of softballs, and her back felt like it was snapping in two. Keisha, the mac and cheese ain't gonna refill itself. Ms. Evelyn shouted from the patio, holding a glass of sweet tea while fanning herself. And bring out more ice. You're moving too slow, girl. Keisha wiped sweat from her eyes. Ms. Evelyn, I'm feeling dizzy. Can I just sit down for 5 minutes? Ms. Evelyn sucked her teeth. You young women too soft. I worked the fields in Mississippi until the day I dropped Marcus. Stop being lazy and serve the guests. Keisha grabbed the bag of ice, heaving it over her shoulder. A sharp pain shot through her lower back, wrapping around her stomach like a vice. She dropped the bag. She hobbled over to the card table where Marcus was slamming down a joker. Read 'em and weep, he yelled, high-fiving his cousin. Marcus, Keisha whispered, grabbing his shoulder. Something's wrong. I'm bleeding. Marcus didn't even turn his head. Hey, not right now. The game is tied. Go sit down inside if you're tired. I'll come check on you in a minute. Marcus, please. I need to go to the hospital. You always tripping, he muttered, shuffling the deck. You just wanted to lose my hand. Go lay down. I said I'll be there. She waited. She lay on Miss Evelyn's guest bed for an hour, the pain turning into agony, the bleeding getting worse. When she finally screamed, it was a cousin who drove her to the ER. Marcus arrived 3 hours later, smelling like beer. The doctor's face was grim. "If you had come in 2 hours ago, Mrs. Davis, we might have been able to stop the labor. But the abruption, we couldn't save him." The ride home that night was silent. Marcus didn't apologize. He banged on the steering wheel and said, "Mama said you was working too hard. You gotta take better care of yourself, Keisha. You weak." Present day. The scream of a siren snapped Keisha back to the great ER entrance. The memory faded, but the scar remained. She was standing on the curb, alone. Again. He had done it again. Pops is sick was a lie. She knew it in her gut. Marcus's father had been posting about his fishing trip on Facebook all week. Marcus wasn't going to check on his dad. He was running away, just like he did at the cookout. He chose his comfort over her life. A security guard jogged over, seeing her doubled over. "Ma'am, you all right? Do you need a wheelchair?" Keisha looked up, her eyes dry. She had cried all her tears 3 years ago. "My husband left," she gritted out, the contraction peaking. "I'm having this baby. Get the chair." As the guard helped her into the seat, Keisha looked one last time at the empty road where the Charger had disappeared. The fear she felt 3 years ago was gone. It was replaced by something colder, something heavier. She reached into her purse and gripped her phone. The email she had received 2 days ago from the Sterling Trust was still unread, the secret she was desperate to share with the man she loved. She had wanted to tell him that their struggle was over, that she had access to a fortune she never touched out of respect for her late mother's wishes. She was going to change his life today. Instead, he showed her that he didn't deserve a life with her at all. "Let's go," Keisha told the guard, her voice surprisingly steady. "I got work to do." The automatic doors of Grady Memorial slid open, blasting Keisha with freezing air that clashed with the sweat dripping down her neck. The security guard pushed a wheelchair fast, dodging visitors and gurneys. "We got a precipitous labor coming in." "She's crowning," the guard shouted. Nurses swarmed. Hands grabbed the chair, lifting her onto a stretcher. The movement sent a fresh wave of agony through Keisha's hips. She gritted her teeth, refusing to scream. Screaming didn't save Malik 3 years ago. It wouldn't save this baby now. "Name?" A nurse with clipboard barked, running alongside the stretcher. "Keisha Davis," she gasped. "Support person? Is the father parking the car?" Keisha closed her eyes tight. The image of the Dodge Charger's taillights burned behind her eyelids. "No," she choked out. "He's not coming." The nurse paused for a split second, a look of pity that felt like a slap, before shouting orders to the team. "Room 4, let's move." In the delivery room, chaos took over. The lights were blinding. Monitors beeped in a rhythm that matched Keisha's racing heart. "Okay, Keisha, I'm Nurse Brenda," an older black woman with silver braids said, leaning over her. She had a voice like warm syrup, but eyes like steel. "I need you to breathe. Deep. The baby is right there, but your pressure is sky high. You gotta calm down." "I can't," Keisha panicked, gripping the rails. "Is the baby moving?" "I don't feel the baby." The trauma of the past crashed into the room. Suddenly, she wasn't at Grady. She was back in that quiet room 3 years ago, hearing the doctor say, "There's no heartbeat. Look at me." Nurse Brenda grabbed Keisha's face, forcing eye contact. "We have a heartbeat. Listen." She cranked the volume on the monitor. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound filled the room, steady and strong. "That's your fighter," Brenda said. "Now, I need you to fight for her." One big push on the next contraction. Pain ripped through Keisha, tearing her apart from the inside. She reached for her phone on the side table. Her fingers trembled as she hit speed dial. Ring, ring, ring. "Yo, this Marcus. I can't come to the phone right now. Leave a message." She hung up and dialed again. Ring, ring, ring. "Yo, this Marcus." "Damn you," Keisha whispered, throwing the phone onto the pile of blankets. "Damn you, Marcus." "Focus on me, baby," Brenda commanded. chin to chest. Push, Keisha screamed, a raw, guttural sound that carried 3 years of grief and 9 months of fear. She pushed against the loneliness. She pushed against the empty space where her husband's hand should have been. She pushed against the lie that she was weak. That's it. Head is out, the doctor announced. One more. Give me everything you got. Keisha grabbed the bed rail so hard her knuckles turned white. She visualized Marcus driving away, visualized Miss Evelyn's sneer, and she used that anger as fuel. She pushed until her vision blurred. Then relief, a slippery warmth, and then the most beautiful sound in the world, a cry, loud, angry, and alive. It's a girl, the doctor said, lifting the baby. Keisha collapsed back onto the pillows, her chest heaving. Tears that she had held back finally spilled over, hot and fast. Nurse Brenda cleaned the baby quickly and placed her on Keisha's chest. The baby was tiny, covered in vernix, with eyes squeezed shut. Keisha touched her cheek. "Imani," she whispered. "I got you. Mama's got you." The room quieted down as the staff cleaned up. One by one, the doctors and nurses left, offering congratulations that felt hollow, without a partner to share them with. Finally, it was just Keisha, Imani, and the hum of the air conditioner. Keisha looked at the clock on the wall. 6:15 a.m. Marcus had been gone for nearly 2 hours. She reached for her phone again. Her hand shook, but not from pain this time, from rage. She checked her notifications. 0 missed calls, 0 texts. She opened the Find My Friends app. She had installed it on Marcus's phone months ago when he lost it at a bar. He probably forgot it was even there. The blue wasn't at his father's house in Decatur. It wasn't at the hospital. That was moving south on I-75. Fast, past the airport. He wasn't handling an emergency. He was driving away from Atlanta entirely. Nurse Brenda came back in to check Keisha's vitals. She saw the phone in Keisha's hand and the devastation on her face. She checked the blood pressure monitor. The numbers were spiking again. "Put the phone down, sugar," Brenda said softly, adjusting the blanket over Imani. "Whatever is on that screen ain't worth your peace right now. You did the hard part. You brought life into this world." Keisha stared at the screen for one more second before turning it off. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. A husband should be here, holding the baby. A father should be cutting the cord. He ain't coming back, is he? Keisha asked, her voice flat. Brenda didn't lie to her. She just patted Keisha's hand. "Some men are just sperm donors, baby. But you? You're a mother. And right now, that little girl is the only thing that matters." Keisha looked down at Imani. The baby gripped Keisha's finger with a strength that shocked her. "You're right," Keisha whispered. "It's just us." But as she closed her eyes, the silence of the room wasn't peaceful. It was a calm before a war. Marcus thought he could drive away. He thought he could leave her here broken. He didn't know that while he was driving south, the woman he left behind was already plotting her rise. The transfer from the delivery room to the postpartum recovery unit was a lonely procession. Usually, a new father walks alongside the gurney, carrying the bags, looking proud and exhausted. But beside Keisha, there was only empty space. The squeak of the gurney wheels against the linoleum was the only sound in the hallway, punctuating the silence where Marcus's voice should have been. Nurse Brenda settled her into a semi-private room. "You get some rest, sugar. The pediatrician will be by in an hour to check on little Miss Imani. You need anything, you press that button. Don't be a hero." Brenda closed the curtain, leaving Keisha in the dim light. Keisha lay back, her body feeling like it had gone 10 rounds in a boxing ring. Imani was asleep in the clear plastic bassinet next to the bed, swaddled tight like a burrito. Keisha stared at her daughter's chest rising and falling. The relief of her survival was slowly being replaced by the crushing weight of reality. How was she going to do this alone? The rent on the Decatur apartment was due in 3 days. Marcus paid the majority of it because Keisha's salary at the call center barely covered groceries and utilities. She reached for her phone on the bedside table, a habit she couldn't break. 7:45 a.m. Still no text from Marcus. "No, is the baby okay?" "No, I'm sorry. Just a blank lock screen." Then the phone buzzed. A single vibration. Keisha's heart jumped. She swiped the screen, expecting to see his name. It wasn't Marcus. It was an email notification. The sender, Sterling and Associates, Estate Management. Keisha frowned. She wiped the sleep from her eyes and opened the app. The subject line hit her harder than a contraction. Trust fund activation confirmed. She clicked it, her breath catching in her throat. Dear Ms. Williams, per the stipulations of the last will and testament of Hattie Mae Williams, the mandatory conditioning period concluded on your 30th birthday last month. We have completed the final audit of the assets. The portfolio, including the grandfathered land rights to the developing tech district in Midtown and the commercial holdings in Old Fourth Ward, is now fully under your control. Current liquid assets, $1,204,500,000. Real estate valuation, $850 million. Please contact a firm at your earliest convenience to arrange the transfer of signatory powers. Regards, Veronica Sterling, ESQ. Keisha stared at the screen. She blinked, waiting for the numbers to change, for the zeros to disappear. They didn't. $1.2 billion. Tears pricked her eyes, but they weren't for Marcus. They were for Hattie. Her mother, Hattie Williams, had spent 40 years scrubbing floors in the mirrored skyscrapers of downtown Atlanta. To the world, she was just a maid in a polyester uniform who took the bus from Bankhead. But Hattie was a genius in disguise. Every dollar she made, she didn't spend on clothes or cars. She bought dirt. In the 70s and 80s, when everyone was fleeing the city, Hattie was buying abandoned lots in Midtown for pennies. She bought rundown warehouses. She bought land that people called worthless. She sat on it, silent as a stone, while the city grew around her. You gotta be humble, Keisha. Hattie used to say, washing dishes in their cramped kitchen. Money makes people act funny. You gotta learn to live with nothing, so you know who your real friends are when you have everything. Hattie had locked it all away in a trust, hidden behind layers of lawyers, set to release only when Keisha turned 30. Old enough to know the value of a dollar and the character of a man. Keisha turned 30 last month. She had tried to tell Marcus. She remembered the night vividly. She had made his favorite, pot roast, and sat him down at the wobbly kitchen table. Marcus, babe, I got something crazy to tell you, she had said, her heart racing. It's about my mama. Marcus hadn't even looked up from his phone. Man, Keisha, can it wait? The Hawks game is on, and my parlay is about to hit. I ain't trying to hear about your mama right now. It's important, Marcus. It could change everything for us. Later, Keisha. Damn, you always talking when I'm trying to focus, he had snapped, turning up the volume on the TV. She had shut her mouth. She washed the dishes in silence. She decided to wait until the baby was born, to surprise him when they were a real family. She wanted to bless him. She wanted to hand him the world. Keisha looked from the phone screen to the empty chair in the corner of the hospital room where Marcus should have been sleeping. He had walked out on a billionaire. He had left his wife and child for a vacation he couldn't afford, unaware that his wife could have bought the entire resort he was staying at. A low, humorless chuckle bubbled up from Keisha's chest. It sounded foreign in the quiet room. He doesn't know, she whispered to Imani, who shifted in her sleep. He thinks I'm trapped. He thinks I'm stuck in that apartment waiting on his check. Keisha's thumb hovered over the delete button, but then she moved it. She took a screenshot of the email. Then she moved the email to a secure folder titled Freedom. She looked at her daughter again. The fear of eviction, the fear of hunger, the fear of being dependent on a man who didn't love her, it all evaporated. He ain't never gonna touch a dime, she vowed, her voice hardening. He wanted to leave? Fine. Stay gone. Keisha hit the reply button to Veronica Sterling. Her fingers flew across the keypad. Ms. Sterling, I'm ready. I need full access immediately. And I need a divorce lawyer. The best one you have. She hit send. The game had changed. Marcus was playing checkers. Keisha had just bought the board. By the morning of the third day, the air in the recovery room had turned stale. The flowers Keisha had bought for herself before the delivery were wilting on the windowsill. The silence from Marcus was no longer a question. It was an answer. Keisha was packed. Her meager belongings, a few onesies, a robe, and her toiletries, fit into a single duffel bag. She sat on the edge of the bed, bouncing Imani on her knee, waiting for the discharge papers. There was a light knock on the door. It wasn't Nurse Brenda this time. It was Jasmine, a younger nurse with bright purple acrylic nails who had been checking Keisha's vitals during the night shifts. She didn't have a clipboard. She was holding her personal cell phone, and she looked like she was about to throw up. "Mrs. Davis?" Jasmine said, her voice barely a whisper. She closed the door behind her and glanced at the hallway window to make sure no one was watching. "Yeah? Is something wrong with the paperwork?" Keisha asked, shifting Imani to her other shoulder. "No, ma'am. The paperwork is fine. It's just—" Jasmine bit her lip. "I know I shouldn't be doing this. I could get fired. But my niece, she goes to school with your husband's little sister, Tasha, and she just sent me something on Instagram." Keisha went still. "What is it?" Jasmine walked over slowly and held out the phone. "I thought you should know, because you've been sitting here for 3 days wondering where he is." Keisha took the phone. It was an Instagram story posted by Tasha, reshared from Marcus's account. The video was shaky and loud. The bass of a trap beat rattled the tiny speaker. The camera panned across endless blue water, then landed on a white deck. There was Marcus. He wasn't at a hospital in Florida. He wasn't sitting by a sick father's bedside. He was wearing a white linen shirt, unbuttoned to his chest, gold chain glinting in the sun. He was holding a bottle of Moat in one hand and a cigar in the other. "We out here," Marcus shouted over the wind, grinning at the camera. "Miami vibes. You know how we do." Then the camera swung to the left. Ms. Evelyn was there, lounging on a white leather seat, wearing a giant sun hat and oversized sunglasses. She raised a glass of orange juice to the camera. "Cheers to the good life," she yelled. "No stress, just blessings." The caption across the bottom read, "Living our best life. Forget the haters. Hashtag mother-son trip. Hashtag South Beach." Keisha watched the video loop 3 times. "No stress," Ms. Evelyn had said, while Keisha was bleeding, while Keisha was pushing a human being out of her body alone. Then a darker realization hit her. She handed the phone back to Jasmine. Her hands were ice cold. "Thank you, Jasmine," she said. Her voice sounded robotic. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Davis," Jasmine whispered, slipping out of the room. Keisha grabbed her own phone. She opened her banking app, the joint account she shared with Marcus, the account where they scraped together their pennies. She looked at the transaction history. July 15th, ATM withdrawal, $1,500. July 15th, Spirit Airlines, $400. The rent money. He hadn't just left her, he had robbed her. That $1,500 was for the landlord. He took the roof over his newborn daughter's head to buy champagne for his mother. Keisha stared at the negative balance on the screen. A week ago, she would have panicked. She would have called him crying, begging him to explain, wondering how she would feed Imani. But today she felt nothing but a cold, clinical clarity. She closed the banking app. She opened the secure folder titled Freedom. She dialed the number at the bottom of the email from Veronica Sterling. It rang once. "Sterling and Associates, executive line. This is Sarah." "This is Keisha Williams," she said. She didn't sound like the girl from the call center anymore. The bass in her voice dropped an octave. "I'm the beneficiary of the Hattie Mae Williams Trust." There was a pause, then the sound of typing. "Yes, Ms. Williams. We received your email. We were expecting you to call next week to set up an appointment." "I don't have until next week," Keisha said, cutting her off. "I'm at Grady Memorial Hospital. I'm being discharged in an hour. I need you to send a car, an SUV, bulletproof if you have it. And I need the jet ready at DeKalb Peachtree Airport." The jet, ma'am? For a destination?" "Doesn't matter. Just get me out of this city for a few days. Put me in the best hotel you have on the books in Savannah or Charleston. Somewhere quiet." "Consider it done," the assistant said, her voice snapping to attention. "One more thing." Keisha said, looking at the sleeping face of her daughter. I need a lawyer, not a state lawyer. I need a shark. Get me the meanest, dirtiest divorce attorney money can buy in the state of Georgia. Someone who likes to break people. We have excellent litigators in-house, Ms. Williams. Good. Have them meet me at the tarmac. And Sarah? Yes, ma'am. Seal the financials, Keisha commanded. My husband thinks I'm broke. He thinks I'm destitute. I want to keep it that way until I'm standing in front of a judge. If a whisper of this trust fund gets out before I serve him papers, I'll fire the whole firm. Do you understand? Crystal clear, Ms. Williams. The car is 5 minutes out. Keisha hung up. She stood up and walked to the mirror. She looked tired. Her hair was wrapped in a messy bun, and she was wearing sweatpants. But the woman staring back wasn't a victim. She picked up Imani. Let's go, baby girl, she whispered. Daddy spent the rent money, so we're going to go spend his inheritance. The lock on the front door of the cramped Decatur apartment jiggled. It was a sticky, humid Tuesday afternoon, exactly 7 days since Keisha had given birth. Inside, the apartment was stripped bare. The walls, usually cluttered with cheap frames and wedding photos, were empty. The only things left were 3 cardboard boxes taped shut by the door and a large black suitcase on the sofa. Keisha stood in the center of the living room. She wasn't wearing her usual faded leggings or the oversized T-shirts Marcus hated. She was dressed in a sharp, black blazer and dark denim, her hair pulled back in a sleek, no-nonsense bun. She looked like a stranger in her own home. The door swung open. Marcus stepped in, dropping his bags on the floor with a heavy thud. He was wearing a bright floral shirt unbuttoned halfway down his chest, a straw fedora, and flip-flops. He looked like a walking postcard for South Beach. The smell of stale airplane air, ocean water, and arrogance wafted off him. He didn't look at Keisha first. He looked at the TV stand. Where the hell is my PlayStation? He barked, kicking the door shut behind him. He finally turned to look at her. He saw the boxes. He saw the suitcase. A smirk curled his lip, slow and cruel. Oh, you leaving? Marcus scoffed, walking past her to the kitchen. He opened the fridge, grabbing the last beer on the shelf. Good. Save me the trouble of kicking you out. Mama said the baby cries too much anyway. I need my sleep if I'm going to be running things at the warehouse. He popped the tab on the beer and took a long swig, leaning against the counter. He looked her up and down, expecting to see tears. He expected the begging. He expected the Keisha, who used to plead with him to stay home on Friday nights. I'm not just leaving, Marcus, Keisha said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. It didn't shake. It didn't pitch up. It was flat. I'm filing for divorce. And I'm filing for sole custody of Imani. Marcus froze with the beer halfway to his mouth. For a second, the room was silent. Then a low chuckle started in his chest. It grew louder until he was full on laughing, head thrown back, choking on his drink. Divorce? He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, shaking his head like she had just told a hilarious joke. You? Divorce me? With what money, Keisha? He pushed off the counter and walked toward her, stepping into her personal space. He used his height to tower over her, a tactic that used to make her shrink. You work at the call center? Keisha, he shouted, gesturing around the empty apartment. You make $12 an hour handling complaints for cable companies. Who you going to hire? One of them billboard lawyers off I-285? Or you going to get a public defender who smells like mothballs? Keisha didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She held his gaze, her eyes dark and unreadable. I have representation, she said simply. Representation? Marcus mocked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Girl, please. You can't even afford a deposit on a new apartment without my paycheck. That's why you're packing, right? Going back to live in that shack with your auntie in Bankhead? Taking my daughter to the ghetto? Imani is going where she's safe. And that isn't with a man who steals rent money to buy bottle service. Marcus's face tightened. The laughter vanished. He slammed the beer can down on the coffee table, crushing it. I didn't steal nothing. That's my money. I'm the head of this house. I needed a break because you were stressing me out. Mama was right about you. You ungrateful. He stepped closer, his chest bumping against her shoulder. He lowered his voice to a menacing growl. "Let me tell you something, Keisha. You can file whatever papers you want, but you ain't got nothing without me. You are nothing without me. You think a judge is going to give a baby to a woman who can't keep the lights on? I'll bury you. Mama knows people. We'll take that baby, and you'll be back scrubbing floors just like your mama did." The mention of Hattie made Keisha's fingers twitch, but she didn't lose control. She let him finish. She let him dig the hole deep. "Are you done?" she asked. "I'm done when I say I'm done," Marcus yelled, veins popping his neck. "Now get your trash and get out. And don't think you're seeing a dime of child support." Keisha walked over to the black suitcase. She reached for the zipper. The sound was loud in the quiet tension of the room. Zip. She hefted the bag onto her shoulder. It was light. She had left everything he ever bought her behind. The cheap jewelry, the clothes he criticized, the wedding ring. It was all sitting on the kitchen counter next to his crushed beer can. She walked to the door and opened it. The humid Atlanta air rushed in. She turned back one last time. Marcus was standing in the middle of the empty living room, looking smug, looking like a king in a castle made of cards. "You think you won," Keisha said softly. "I know I won," Marcus sneered. "Look at you, running away." "We'll see," Keisha said. She stepped out, closing the door gently behind her. She didn't look back at the apartment complex with its peeling paint and broken gate. She walked straight to the waiting black SUV idling at the curb, where a driver in a suit held the back door open. As the car pulled away, Keisha watched the window of their old apartment. Marcus was probably already on the phone with his mother, bragging about how he kicked her out. He had no idea that the call center girl he just evicted had a net worth that could buy the entire company he worked for before lunch. The war had started, and Marcus had just brought a knife to a nuclear standoff. The black SUV didn't head toward the women's shelter on the outskirts of town, nor did it go to her aunt's small house in Bankhead. It glided smoothly up the manicured driveway of the St. Regis Atlanta in Buckhead. The doorman, dressed in a pristine uniform, opened the door before the vehicle even came to a complete halt. "Welcome back, Ms. Williams," he said, bowing slightly. Keisha stepped out, shielding Imani's eyes from the sun. The transition was jarring. An hour ago, she was standing in a roach-infested apartment being told she was nothing. Now, she was walking across marble floors under a chandelier that cost more than the entire apartment complex she had just left. She took the private elevator up to the penthouse suite. The room was expansive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlanta skyline. A waiting nanny, hired by the Sterling firm, stepped forward to take the baby bag. "She's sleeping," Keisha whispered, handing Imani over. "Just put her down gently." Sitting at the dining table, surrounded by stacks of files, was Veronica Sterling. She was a striking woman with skin the color of deep mahogany and a silver bob cut, so sharp it could cut glass. She wore a suit that whispered power. This was the woman who charged $1,000 an hour, and looking at her, Keisha knew she was worth every penny. "He signed for the summons," Veronica said without looking up from her iPad. "He thinks it's a standard petition. He has no idea about the trust." Keisha sat down, exhaling a breath she felt like she had been holding for a week. "He thinks I'm homeless. He told me I'd be crawling back." Veronica looked up, her eyes gleaming with cold intelligence. "Good. Let him think that. In war, you never show your artillery until the enemy is in the kill zone. We need him arrogant. We need him careless." Veronica stood up and walked over to a clothing rack she had wheeled into the suite. Hanging on it were Keisha's new clothes: silk blouses, tailored trousers, cashmere coats. Veronica pushed them all aside and reached for a plastic grocery bag on the floor. She pulled out Keisha's old gray cardigan, the one with the fraying cuffs, and a pair of faded jeans. "Wear this," Veronica commanded. Keisha frowned. "I thought the point was to show him I don't need him." "The point is to trap him," Veronica corrected. "If you walk in there dripping in Gucci, he's going to ask questions. He's going to delay. He's going to fight for a settlement. But if you walk in there looking broken, looking destitute, he'll be so eager to gloat, so eager to wash his hands of you." that he'll sign anything we put in front of him just to get it over with. Let them dig their own grave, Keisha. Then we'll push them in. 2 weeks later, the preliminary mediation hearing was scheduled at the Fulton County Courthouse. It was a humid, miserable morning. Marcus arrived 20 minutes late. He strode down the hallway like he owned the building. He was wearing a cheap, shiny synthetic suit that was a size too small, the fabric stretching tight across his shoulders. Flanking him was Ms. Evelyn. She was impossible to miss. She wore a massive, wide-brimmed church hat adorned with fake flowers, a purple dress that clashed with the linoleum floors, and a look of absolute disdain plastered on her face. They were laughing loudly, drawing stares from the other people in the waiting area. "I'm telling you, Mama," Marcus said, loud enough for the receptionist to hear. "She's going to be begging for gas money to get back home. Watch." "She better not ask me for nothing," Ms. Evelyn huffed, clutching her purse. "I told you that girl was bad luck from the start. Weak stock." The elevator doors pinged open. Keisha stepped out. She kept her head down. She was wearing a frayed gray cardigan, wrapped tight around her body as if she were cold. Her jeans were old, and she wore scuffed sneakers. She wore no makeup, letting the dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights with the baby show. She walked slowly, clutching a battered folder to her chest. Veronica walked a few paces behind her, dressed in a nondescript gray suit, carrying a plain briefcase, blending into background like a shadow. Marcus nudged his mother, a cruel grin spreading across his face. "Look at her," he whispered, but in the echoing hallway. It sounded like a shout. "Pathetic. Look at those shoes. She looks like she's been sleeping in a car." Ms. Evelyn sucked her teeth, shaking her head. "Lord have mercy. Embarrassing. We gonna crush her, Marcus. She ain't got no fight left in her." Keisha heard them. Every word was a dagger. But she didn't look up. She didn't straighten her spine. She kept her eyes on the floor, playing the role of the defeated ex-wife perfectly. "Mrs. Davis?" the court clerk called out. "Mr. Davis? The mediator is ready for you now." Marcus adjusted his tie, puffing out his chest. He walked past Keisha, deliberately bumping her shoulder. "After you, sweetheart," he sneered. "Try not to cry in there. I got things to do." Keisha paused at the door. She looked up just for a second, catching Veronica's eye. Veronica gave a microscopic nod. The trap is set. Keisha walked into the conference room, the lamb walking willingly into the slaughterhouse. Or so the wolf thought. He didn't know the lamb had brought a lion. The mediation room inside the Fulton County Courthouse was windowless and smelled of lemon polish and stale coffee. A long mahogany table divided the room like a trench. On one side sat Marcus and Ms. Evelyn, spreading their papers and personal items out as if they were setting up for a picnic. On the other side, Keisha sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring at the grain of the wood. Veronica Sterling sat beside her, perfectly still, her hands resting on a closed file folder. The court-appointed magistrate, a tired-looking man named Judge Holloway, adjusted his glasses and looked at the parties. "Mr. Davis, I see you don't have legal counsel present today. Are you waiting for an attorney?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, interlocking his fingers behind his head. He smirked at Keisha. "No, Your Honor. I decided to represent myself. I don't see the need to waste money when the facts are this simple. I'm a businessman. I know how to read a contract." Judge Holloway raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Very well. Proceed with your opening statement regarding custody and asset division." Marcus cleared his throat and stood up, buttoning his tight suit jacket. He paced a little, playing to an imaginary audience. "Your Honor, look at the facts. My wife, ex-wife, hopefully soon, is emotionally unstable. She's currently unemployed, living out of, well, we don't even know where she's living. She refuses to tell me." He gestured dramatically toward Keisha. "She's transient. She's broke. She can't provide for my daughter, Imani. I, however, am a shift manager at the Amazon warehouse in Union City. I bring home a steady paycheck. I have a 401k. I have stability. Keisha, she can't even afford a proper attorney." Marcus pointed a finger at Veronica. "Look at who she brought. No offense, lady, but But you look like you work out a strip mall next to a check-cashing spot. What is she paying you? Coupons. Veronica didn't blink. She didn't look at Marcus. She kept her eyes fixed on the judge, her face a mask of calm indifference. I am here to ensure Ms. Williams' interests are protected, she said, her voice smooth and low. Interests? Marcus laughed. Her only interest is trying to get a handout from me. But I ain't paying for her laziness. Amen. Ms. Evelyn chimed in from the table. She fanned herself with a church program she had pulled from her purse. Tell him, son. Ma'am, please refrain from speaking unless addressed, Judge Holloway warned. Ms. Evelyn ignored him, leaning forward, her eyes narrowing on Keisha. I'm just speaking the truth, Judge. She ain't fit. We tried to tell her with the first baby. I told her, Keisha, sit down, stop running around. But she wouldn't listen. She's stubborn. Keisha's head snapped up, her breath hitched. She killed my grandson with her negligence. Ms. Evelyn spat, the words landing like acid in the center of the room. And now she wants to drag this new baby into poverty? Over my dead body. Keisha's hands trembled violently on her lap. The room spun. The memory of the blood, the grief, and the tiny coffin rushed back. She opened her mouth to scream, to defend herself, to tell them that they were the ones who refused to take her to the hospital. But before she could make a sound, a hand covered hers. It was warm and firm. Veronica Sterling pressed down on Keisha's hand, grounding her. Steady, Veronica whispered, only loud enough for Keisha to hear. Not yet. Keisha looked at Veronica. The lawyer's eyes were sharp, dangerous. They promised retribution. Keisha swallowed her scream and looked back down. Marcus mistook the silence for defeat. He sat back down, looking satisfied. He slid a stack of stapled papers across the table toward Keisha. See? She knows it's true. She got nothing to say. He tapped the papers. This is a standard agreement, Keisha. I get full custody. You get visitation every other weekend. Supervised by my mama. No alimony. No child support from me. Since you're the one leaving. You walk away clean. Keisha stared at the papers. The audacity was breathtaking. Sign the papers, Keisha, Marcus said, his voice dropping to that mock-sympathetic tone he used when he was manipulating her. Stop fighting. You know you can't win this. Give us the baby. Go back to your Annie's house and get your life together. Hell, if you sign it right now. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled wad of $20 bills. He tossed them onto the table next to the legal documents. I'll even give you some gas money. Get you a hot meal. You look hungry. The disrespect hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Judge Holloway looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. Mr. Davis, that is highly inappropriate, the judge said. I'm just being generous. Your Honor. Marcus grinned. Veronica Sterling slowly removed her hand from Keisha's. She adjusted her glasses. She sat up straighter, and suddenly, the plain gray suit didn't look cheap anymore. It looked like armor. Are you done? Veronica asked softly. Her voice carried a weight that made the air conditioner seem loud. Marcus blinked, confused by her tone. Yeah, we done. Ball's in your court. Sign it. Veronica didn't reach for his papers. Instead, she reached for her briefcase. The click of the latches opening echoed in the silent room. Actually, Mr. Davis, Veronica said, a shark-like smile finally touching her lips. I believe the ball is about to be very much in ours. Veronica Sterling didn't shout. She didn't slam her hand on the table. She simply stood up, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The air, previously thick with Marcus's arrogance and Miss Evelyn's perfume, suddenly felt thin and sharp. With a slow, deliberate motion, Veronica used the tip of her expensive fountain pen to slide the crumpled $20 bills back across the mahogany table toward Marcus. She treated the money like it was contaminated waste. Keep your gas money, Mr. Davis, Veronica said, her voice crisp. You're going to need it for the bus ride home. Marcus scowled, snatching the cash back. What is that supposed to mean? You refusing the settlement? Because that offer expires when I walk out that door. We are rejecting your offer in its entirety, Veronica stated. She opened her briefcase, a sleek leather attaché that looked like it cost more than Marcus's car, and pulled out a thick black binder. She slid it across the table. It landed with a heavy thud in front of Judge Holloway. Actually, Mr. Davis, we aren't asking for child support. We aren't asking for alimony. We are asking for a complete severance of parental rights based on documented abandonment, emotional abuse, and medical negligence. Marcus laughed, a nervous, barking sound. Severance? You want me to sign away my rights? You crazy? I'm the father, and how are you going to feed that baby without my check, huh? You're going to live off welfare. Ms. Evelyn leaned forward, her hat brim nearly touching the table. And who are you to come in here making demands? You're just some legal aid lawyer trying to make a name for yourself. You don't know who we are. Veronica turned her head slowly to look at Ms. Evelyn. It was a look a lioness gives a yapping hyena. I am Veronica Sterling, she announced, the name hanging in the air. Senior partner at Sterling, Gold & Vance. Judge Holloway's eyes widened. He sat up straighter. Everyone in the Atlanta legal world knew Sterling, Gold & Vance. They were the firm that represented Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, and old money. They didn't do divorces for warehouse managers. They destroyed empires. And my client, Veronica continued, gesturing to the woman in the frayed cardigan, is not destitute. In fact, Ms. Keisha Williams is a sole beneficiary of the Williams Trust. Marcus blinked. The what? Keisha's mama was a maid. She didn't have no trust. That is what she wanted you to believe, Veronica said. She picked up a remote control from the table and pointed it at the drop-down screen on the wall behind the judge. Your Honor, if I may direct your attention to Exhibit A, the current financial standing of the petitioner, verified as of this morning. The projector hummed to life. A bright white beam cut through the dim room, displaying a digital bank statement from a private bank of Atlanta. The font was large. The numbers were black. Account holder, Keisha Marie Williams Trust Portfolio Balance, $1,204,500,000. The room went dead silent. The kind of silence that happens after a bomb goes off before the screaming starts. The only sound was a hum of the projector fan. Marcus stared at the screen. He squinted. He tilted his head. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked like he was trying to solve a physics equation in a foreign language. Is that? Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. Is that a billion? That is correct, Veronica said, her voice cool and detached. $1,204,500,000. Ms. Evelyn grabbed her chest. She pulled her glasses down from her head, wiping them frantically on her dress, and put them back on. She gasped, a sound like a tire popping. That ain't real. That's a typo. Keisha? Keisha! Tell them it's a typo. Keisha finally looked up. She looked at Marcus, whose face had drained of all color. She looked at Ms. Evelyn, whose arrogance had been replaced by pure, unadulterated shock. Keisha didn't smile. She just stared at them with eyes that had seen too much pain to find this funny. It's not a typo, Keisha said softly. But how? Marcus stammered. He stood up, his knees knocking against the table. When? We rich. Correction. Veronica cut in, stepping between Marcus and Keisha. She is rich. You are not. Marcus looked at the screen again, then at Keisha. The realization washed over him. The timing, the dates. You had this? When I left. Keisha inherited it last month, Veronica said, delivering the final blow. On her 30th birthday. She tried to tell you that night. She cooked you dinner. She wanted to share the news. She wanted to build a life with you. Veronica paused, letting the words sink in. But you were too busy watching the game. And then, when she went into labor, you were too busy flying to Miami to spend $1,500 of rent money on a VIP section. You left a billionaire in a parking lot to go play rich for a weekend. Marcus slumped back into his chair. He looked physically ill. The image of the yacht, the champagne, the Instagram post, it all flashed before his eyes. He had traded $1 billion empire for a bottle of moat and a likes on social media. Judge, Marcus croaked, looking at Judge Holloway with desperate eyes. Judge, I didn't know. If I knew, I would have stayed. I would have. You would have what? Keisha asked, her voice cutting through his panic. You would have loved me? You would have been a father? You only show up when there's something in it for you, Marcus. That's why you're not getting a dime. And that's why you're never seeing my daughter again. The power in the room had shifted violently. The pathetic woman in the cardigan was gone. In her place sat the most powerful person in the building, and the man who had abandoned her was now realizing he had just made the most expensive mistake in history. Marcus's face went from smug to pale gray, the color draining out of him like dirty water from a tub. He looked at the projection screen, with a number $1,204,500,000, glowed in high definition. Then he looked at Keisha, the woman wearing the frayed cardigan he had mocked 5 minutes ago. His brain seemed to short-circuit. The insult he had prepared died in his throat. He stood up, his legs wobbling, and reached a hand across the table, his fingers trembling. Bae! His voice cracked, pitched high with sudden, desperate hope. We rich? Keisha didn't flinch. She didn't lean away. She just looked at his outstretched hand, the same hand that had refused to help her off the curb at the hospital. I am rich, Keisha corrected, her voice cutting through the room like a diamond cutter. You are broke. Marcus blinked rapidly. Keisha, baby, come on. Stop playing. I know we had our issues, but $1 billion? That's our future. That's for our family. I'm the father of your child. We a team. I love you. You loved vacation more than you loved my life, Keisha said. You loved your mother's approval more than you loved your wife. You don't love me, Marcus. You love what I can do for you. And right now, I can't do anything for you but wave goodbye. Ms. Evelyn, who had been clutching her chest as if having a heart attack, suddenly recovered with miraculous speed. She stood up, her massive church hat tilting dangerously to the side. The sneer was gone, replaced by a wide, terrifyingly fake smile that showed all her gold-capped teeth. Now hold on, Ms. Evelyn shouted, waving her fan. Everybody just calm down. That's my granddaughter. We are family. Blood is thicker than water. She rounded the table, trying to approach Keisha, but Veronica Sterling stood up and blocked her path with a single raised hand. Ms. Evelyn stopped, but she kept talking, her voice dripping with syrup. Keisha, baby, look at me. I always knew you were special. Why do you think I was so hard on you? Huh? I pushed you because I saw your potential. I was molding you into a strong woman. It was tough love. Sugar. Grandma loves you. Keisha slowly stood up. She looked past Veronica, directly into the eyes of the woman who had made her life a living hell for 3 years. You didn't push me to be strong, Ms. Evelyn, Keisha said, her voice turning to ice. You pushed me until I broke. You pushed me until I was bleeding in your kitchen. You pushed me until I lost my son. The room went deadly quiet again. Ms. Evelyn's smile faltered. I begged you for help that day, Keisha continued, tears finally stinging her eyes, not from sadness, but from the release of years of rage. I told you I was hurting, and you told me to stop being lazy. You watched me lose my first baby, and you called it God's will. And last week, you took my husband to Miami while I was screaming in labor alone. You don't get to be a grandmother. You don't get to be family. You are a stranger to me. But, Keisha, Marcus started, sweat pouring down his face. And you, Keisha turned on him. You think this money is for you? You think you hit the lotto? This money isn't a payout, Marcus. It's a wall. This money is to make sure I can hire enough security that I never have to see your face again. It's to make sure Imani never has to wait for a daddy who isn't coming. Marcus looked around the room, panic setting in. Judge, Your Honor, she's emotional. She's trying to alienate me with money. I have rights. I'm the father. Judge Holloway had seen enough. He had been reviewing the evidence Veronica had submitted, the time-stamped photos of the Miami trip, the hospital admission log showing Keisha loan, the bank transfers where Marcus drained the rent money. The judge picked up his gavel. He didn't look tired anymore. He looked angry, Bang. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Mr. Davis, sit down," Judge Holloway commanded. Marcus collapsed into his chair, looking like a deflated balloon. "In 20 years on the bench," the judge said, his voice deep and resonating, "I have seen bad fathers, but I have rarely seen a display of selfishness this profound." He looked at the papers Marcus had tried to get Keisha to sign earlier, the ones offering her gas money. He picked them up and dropped them into the wastebasket beside his desk. "Sole custody is granted to the mother, Ms. Keisha Williams," the judge ruled. "Full legal and physical custody." "Objection!" Marcus yelled. "Overruled." The judge snapped. "Furthermore, Mr. Davis, considering your wife's substantial assets, the court finds that you are not needed for financial support. You are irrelevant to the child's economic well-being. And considering your character, your abandonment of a spouse in, active labor, and your subsequent conduct, the court finds you are not needed for anything else either. Visitation?" Marcus whimpered. "Denied," Judge Holloway said firmly. "I am granting a permanent restraining order against both Mr. Marcus Davis and Ms. Evelyn Davis regarding Ms. Williams and the minor child Imani. You are to stay 500 yards away at all times. If you violate this, you will go to jail. Case closed." Bang. "No!" Ms. Evelyn shrieked. "You can't do this. That's $1 billion. We are entitled to half. It's marital property." "Inheritance is not marital property in the state of Georgia, ma'am," Veronica Sterling said, closing her briefcase with a satisfying snap, "especially when it was kept in a trust that predates the marriage. He gets nothing. You get nothing, except the bill for my legal fees." Keisha turned away from them. She didn't look at Marcus, who was now cried with his head in his hands. She didn't look at Ms. Evelyn, who was screaming at the bailiff. She walked toward the door. For the first time in years, she felt light. The weight was gone. She walked out of the courtroom, leaving the chaos behind her, stepping into a future that belonged only to her. The weight of Veronica Sterling's words, "He gets nothing, you get nothing," hung in the courtroom air like a guillotine blade. And then it dropped. Marcus looked at Keisha, really looked at her, for the first time in years. He didn't see the tired woman who cooked his meals or the wife he ignored for video games. He saw the $1 billion he had just fumbled. The realization hit his central nervous system like a sledgehammer. His eyes rolled back in his head. His knees unhinged. Thud. Marcus hit the courtroom floor face first, landing in a heap of cheap polyester and regret. "Marcus, my baby!" Ms. Evelyn screamed, dropping her purse and falling to her knees beside him. She slapped his cheeks frantically. "Medic, somebody help. My son is dying. They killed him." The bailiff rushed over, radioing for assistance. The room dissolved into chaos. Keisha didn't rush. She didn't gasp. She stood up slowly, smoothing the wrinkles of her faded jeans. She reached into the battered canvas tote bag she had brought with her. But instead of pulling out a tissue, she pulled out a brand-new black quilted Chanel handbag with gold hardware. She hung it on her shoulder. The contrast between the bag and her ragged cardigan was sharp, jarring. It was the final shedding of her skin. She walked around the table. Marcus's legs were sprawled across the aisle, blocking her path. Ms. Evelyn looked up, tears streaming down her face, expecting Keisha to help, to care, to show that family loyalty she preached about. Keisha stopped. She looked down at Marcus, unconscious on the dirty tile. Then, with the grace of a queen stepping over a puddle, she stepped over his legs. "Ms. Williams," Veronica asked, holding the door open. "I'm ready, Veronica," Keisha said, not looking back at the screaming woman or the fallen man. "Let's go get some lunch." "I'm starving." 6 months later, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Atlanta skyline in hues of violet and gold. From the terrace of the penthouse at the St. Regis, the city looked like a toy set. Keisha sat on a velvet lounge chair, sipping sparkling water. Imani, now a chubby, happy 6-month-old, was rolling around on a plush rug nearby, giggling at a floating bubble. Keisha was different. The dark circles were gone. Her skin glowed with the kind of radiance that comes from 8 hours of sleep and zero stress. She wore a silk robe that cost more than her old car. Her phone buzzed on the glass table. It was a text from her property manager. Message: the acquisition is complete. The signage goes up tomorrow. Keisha smiled. She opened her laptop and pulled up the live security feed of a specific warehouse in Union City, the one Marcus managed. She hadn't fired him. That would have been too easy. Being unemployed would have let him play the victim. It would have given him an excuse to beg. No, Keisha had done something far more calculated. She bought the logistics company. She bought the building. She bought the land it sat on. Through the grainy camera feed, she saw Marcus. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. He was yelling at a forklift driver, looking stressed, wiping sweat from his forehead. He was working double shifts because he had legal fees to pay. Ms. Evelyn had tried to sue Keisha for grandparent rights and lost, resulting in a countersuit that drained their savings. The camera zoomed in as a crew of workers began installing a new plaque on the wall behind Marcus's station. Marcus turned around. He froze. The new sign was massive, brushed steel, impossible to miss. Williams Global Enterprises Logistics Division. Keisha watched as Marcus stared at the name. She watched him pull his pay stub out of his pocket and look at the header. It was there, too. Williams Global Enterprises. He wasn't the king of his castle. He was an employee in hers. Every hour he worked, every box he lifted, every dollar he made contributed to the wealth of the woman he abandoned. He couldn't quit. He needed the money too badly. He was trapped in a cage built by his own ego, and Keisha held the key. Keisha closed the laptop. She didn't feel a surge of malicious joy. She just felt done. She picked up Imani, lifting her into the air. The baby squealed, grabbing at Keisha's face with tiny, confident hands. "You see that view, baby girl?" Keisha whispered, pointing at the city lights. "That's yours. All of it." Keisha realized then that Hattie was right. The money was powerful. Yes, it bought the penthouse. It bought the building. It bought the lawyers. But the money wasn't the happiness. The happiness was the silence. The happiness was waking up without walking on eggshells. The happiness was knowing that she and her daughter were safe from people who only knew how to take. The money didn't buy her a new life. It built a wall around her peace. And that wall was bulletproof. This story teaches us 3 critical lessons. The trap of arrogance. Marcus believed his current position was permanent. He treated Keisha based on her present circumstances, not her future potential. He failed to realize that life is a wheel. The person at the bottom today can be at the top tomorrow. Never treat people like they are beneath you, because you never know who is holding the keys to the door you'll need to walk through later. Character over currency. Money exposes who you really are. For Marcus, a little bit of money made him arrogant and cruel. For Keisha, a lot of money made her generous and protective. The wealth didn't change them. It just magnified what was already in their hearts. The expiration date of loyalty. Loyalty is a currency, and you should never spend on someone who keeps giving you counterfeit love. Keisha learned that staying in a toxic situation isn't strength. It's self-destruction. The moment you realize your worth, you stop giving discounts to people who can't afford your value. And that is the story of the billionaire he left behind. What do you think? Did Marcus get what he deserved, or was Keisha too harsh by buying his job? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story satisfied your soul, please hit that like button and subscribe to Folktale Bestie. We are building a community of storytellers and truth seekers, and we want you to be a part of it. Don't forget to tell us, which country are you watching from? Until next time, remember, be careful how you treat people, because the tables don't just turn, sometimes they break. Thanks for watching.